Well, what's up, fantasy football fans? It's that time of the weekend. It's Wednesday, and welcome to the Rockin Renegades fantasy football podcast, by Sports Five. We're going to talk about some of our top three players at each position tonight. We're going to talk about some rookies and where they should be drafted. But before we get into things, let's talk about our sponsor, the Halftime Lounge. Gina Marissa, go see them. Great bar, cheap drinks, good food. Come up. They have pool table. They have multiple things to go on. They have karaoke. Stop up the halftime. Tell them Ralph sent you. And before we get going, I want to introduce my co-host for tonight. He is our guru of the gridiron. Welcome, John, huh?
Guru, man. Thanks, Ralph, man. Thanks for having me. Guru.
Would you rather been the Sultan of Sack or the King of Crush?
Higher than I should be, man.
I had all kind for you, John. I had all kind for you tonight. How you doing?
Good, man.
How you doing, John? Good?
Good. How about you, Ralph?
Good. I've been looking forward to this all week. So since we only got a half hour, we might as well jump into this tonight. Let's look at our top three. So with the drafts going this week, and I know we have ours this Sunday, and we're in a kind of a Dynasty Keepers IDP league that we draft every year. And with the new folks coming up with the new drafts, let's go over the top three players at each position before we get into like the rookies and where we're expecting them to be drafted. But so let's look at our top three quarterbacks. And on my list, I have Jackson, Allen, and I might surprise somebody with my third. A lot of people like Jalen Hurts, a lot of people like Daniels, but I think Joe Burrow, man, this year is going to go off. The defense is so bad. With Chase, with Higgins, I'm expecting 45 touchdowns and 4,600 yards is going to be my bet for Burrow this year. What's your thoughts on the top three?
What's cool is saying Burrow. I know you have him on your team too, so
I got Burrow and Chase. I love the stack. I love the stack, and that's something we'll talk about fantasy going forward. If you can stack your players, you might as well get the most bang for your buck. And yes, that's right. There is no Mahomes or Daniels in my top three. For me, Daniels. I mean, I love the kid. I really do. But with McLaren not signing, them only having Debo, especially I don't know what they're going to do at running back, and we can even talk about that a little bit later. But Brian Robinson on the block, they have Eckler, but I have to drop Daniels out of my top three. So go ahead, John. What do you think?
I do on that too, Ralph. If I look at top three, though, I have to put Josh Allen number one, based on what he did, for all these years. I mean, what the guy does, he carries that offense, carries that team. I got to put Burrow in the top three, too, this year. I think with T. Higgins coming back, obviously Jamar Chase is lights out. And if anytime that you have both of those guys on the field with that quarterback and, that offense, it's high-powered.
So those are your two. So what do you for your three? You dropping Lamar Jackson out for Daniels or Hurts, or what are you thinking?
I got to put Lamar in there as much as I'm not a Ravens fan, obviously, you know that. I just think that the guy just does so much. You can't you can't do anything to take him out of the top three. Running a football, every time he's on the field, touches the ball, he always has potential to score. You just can't take him. And he's also he's developed into a decent pocket passer now, which I was curious to see early, if that would happen. But they have him there, and
amazing what adding Travis Henry does to your team, huh? And does for you as a quarterback.
Right.
And one thing I'm going to go over with the newer fantasy football people is quarterbacks are stacked. If you're in just a regular single league, you could probably wait on a quarterback. Don't be the guy that reaches for that quarterback at the end of the first round, beginning of the second round. Your top 10 to 12 quarterbacks should get you fairly decent output. But before we go too far, let's jump to the running backs. What do you think, John? Let's give me yours first.
Well, you can't knock Bijan Robinson out of there. I mean, he's the guy that's been going, the first overall in running back. I look at some of the drafts like I did, the draft tonight. I was surprised at how far Jainty went. I mean, he went up he was definitely in the top 10. I think he went somewhere in the 8 range. Like you said, Henry. I mean, consistency, just nonstop in that offense. The amount of carries that guy has. It seems like he gets stronger. Obviously gets stronger at the end of the season. But, I mean, he gets stronger the further he goes into his career. I mean, I've never seen a running back with that sustainability. So you got to put him in there. And the guy that I think is going to surprise a lot of people is a lot of question marks around him is Christian McCaffrey. I mean, I've seen him, drop out of the top 15 in some of these drafts, which is amazing to me. But then I saw him go, 5th overall tonight.
Well, let's look at this. Let's talk about McCaffrey real quick. I know we touched on him last week. Now, going into that offense, they have a lot of people hurt. So you basically have Kittle and McCaffrey is your whole offense.
Right.
And Ricky Pearsall is probably the only healthy receiver they have. So You're right. Any other year, if he didn't have the Achilles problems last year, I mean, he goes possibly 1. He's definitely an all-time talent, but the guy has many injuries. But not since we got a lot to go through tonight. So you're saying your number 1's Bijan. You would take Bijan first.
I would definitely take Bijan first.
Who are you looking at second?
Oh, when I look at my list, to me, now this is just to me. I'm not going to say everybody's going to side with me on this, but I would take McCaffrey next. The reason is because of the multifaceted. You don't get a guy that's that gives you that much, and he's going to have to contribute more in this offense, like you said, with all the injuries, with obviously question marks all over the place at wide receiver.
And he's going to be a king in the league if you're a PPR and a half PPR league. The receptions. If he gets 6, 7, even 8 receptions a week out of the backfield, I mean, you're talking about 25, 26 point week. When I usually draft a team, John, and I try to put my team together and I try to get my receivers, my running backs, I look for guys that are going to put me up a constant 15, 16, 17 points in each position a week. In a standard scoring league, PPR that puts you around like 130, 140 points a week, it should be enough to pretty close to win your week. And a guy, if you do get PPR, a guy like McCaffrey is key. And like I said, if he's healthy. So you're saying Bijan, McCaffrey, who's your number 3?
When I look at that list, I have to say Henry. I mean, between him and Saquon, that's tough. I mean, I think I would, looking at where I've drafted in these last couple of weeks in the different mocks and things, I mean, you got to have Saquon up there. I think I would definitely put him ahead of Henry. But those 4 right there, I mean, you can't go wrong with any of those 4.
The only thing that worries me about Saquon is the touches. You look at the running back history. Anybody that gets over 350 some touches a year usually has a bad year. But Saquon's a monster, man. Him in that offense, I can't argue with. The only thing I'm wondering, like Jamar Gibbs, not putting him in the top 3. I mean, I get, he splits time with Montgomery. Montgomery steals a lot of the touchdowns, but could it be a different year for Gibbs? Is a big question. But for my top 3, I would say I would stick with Bijan 1 because of the touches he's going to get. And God, if this guy gets hurt again, I mean, I've had Saquon on my team for years, and it's amazing. The touches the guy had, and he put up like 378 total touches. It's amazing. But I would have to go Bijan, Barkley, and then I'm going to roll the dice with you, John. If he's healthy, it's probably a not popular pick with Gibbs and Henry being there, but I'm going to have to say McCaffrey at 3. I see him slowly creeping up in drafts. He's creeping up to the end of the first round a lot, but if he's healthy, smart bet is draft the guy. So
I think so too. I'm hoping and praying because I got him in our league too. It's one of those things. It's like you say with Barkley, but you look at you like you said right there, Ralph, the touches.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are reliable, and I think the reason that I kind of dropped Gibbs just a little bit is the fact that you have a healthy Montgomery coming in
Right.
and basically a new offense too. So, as far as the goal line carries, you have Montgomery in there with Gibbs. I
It's
see
not a
more goal line carries being robbed, obviously.
it's not a Ben Johnson offense anymore.
No.
So I want to see what this does for Swift in Chicago this year. His best year was under Johnson. So it could be a monster year for him. Keep an eye. For at the end of drafts, the end of somewhere in the second round, if you're looking for running back, maybe take a roll the dice on Swift and see how that works for you guys. But let's move over to receivers, Sean. So I think we're all in into number one receiver. I mean, everybody across the board, every time you look, everybody you talk to. I mean, Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is just a monster. I mean,
no doubt.
You can't drop him out at least the top two. Me, like I said, in my dynasty league, I drafted Chase and I traded up, or I traded up for Burrow the first year, knowing that I was going to Chase the next year. So I love this, like I said, love to stack my players, and it's worked for me. It puts you in the money. But I go with Chase, and then I would say Jefferson. God, it's the number 3 is where I stumble a little bit, because I want to say CeeDee Lamb. I love CeeDee Lamb, and the Dak Prescott thing for me is just, I don't know. And then adding Pickens, they finally have a halfway decent, second receiver. I know they had Cooks for a while. Is he going to drop? And then the next guy, I look at it, maybe Amon-Ra, the sun god, but they got so many mouths to feed there too. You got Laporta, you got Williams, you got Amon-Ra.
Right. He's a touchdown maker, though. That's the thing.
I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and you're going to like this because the guy's sitting on your team. I think the guy's going to be a target monster. I think he's going to be big. I'm going to push him up my board 3-4 spots, and I'm going to say Nico Collins at number 3.
Great player. I mean, he makes such a difference in that offense too. He's
amazing.
The go-to guy. Stretches the field, he opens it up. And he scores touchdowns. I mean,
he does. No Tank Dell. Nobody. I mean, he's going to be a target hog this year. And like I said, the other guys, and I love CeeDee Lamb. I'm not saying he's not good, and everybody would love to draft him. And the same thing with Amon-Ra. But in the same thing, another guys, Puka Nacua. With Stafford being hurt. Then you got Adams there again. Cup leaves, Adams comes in. Is he going to be the same player? I'm looking for targets. When I'm putting my receivers together, I'm looking for targets. Guys are going to see 10 looks a week. A lot of people say, "Hey, no CeeDee, you're nuts," but I'm just dropping him down 1 or 2 spots. So, your thoughts, John?
And you look at the inconsistency of that team. I mean, CeeDee obviously is the go-to guy. But what are we looking at in a running game? And that's one thing that I think sets the precedent for how these offenses go. I mean, if you have no running game, obviously you got 2 great receivers, but you're going to be looking at, concentrating on that when you're a defense. When you game plan for it, it's a little bit different story than when you have something to offset it.
Come on, John. They got Javonte Williams. They got Blue. They got who else? Miles Sanders, right? What's Miles Sanders, like 152 years old by now?
Yeah, he had a season or 2 was good in Philly, but then there's a lot of question marks back there. I actually would take Blue over those 2, no doubt. If we're getting into the rookie.
So what are you saying? Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson? You agree with the top 2?
I agree with the top 2. I'd like to say Collins too, but when I look at what Amon-Ra does, and I had him won a championship with him last year. The guy, he's consistent all over the field, and I think that's one of the main things that I like about him. It's not that they just use him, between the 20s. I mean, he's a red zone threat. He sees a lot of targets. I think between him and Collins, man, it's such a tough pick, and you throw in Nacua in there too. But I just think that the guy that's Goff's go-to guy is Amon-Ra, and that'd be the guy I would take right there. But
Once again, different offense.
Different offense, but you still have that quarterback receiver, trust. And when there's that trust, then you see, you start seeing the targets, and you see he's going to be his go-to guy regardless, and a great running game too. So they still got a lot there.
We're about at the halfway point here, John. So we gotta hurry up here with our tight ends here. But once again, you sponsored this week is the Halftime Lounge. Go see Gina, go see Marissa. Stop in. They have great wings. They'll have spaghetti night. They have great food. It's a nice local bar in Cathel in the back end of Baldwin. Have you ever been there, John?
I've not been there.
Go check it out. Play some pool, and I know you have the voice of an angel with Rockin' the Fast Lane. You got to go up and sing some karaoke sometime when they have it. So.
Hey, I've been on stage with you guys more than enough, so believe me, that's my training, and that's it. That's it.
But it always seems like every time you're on the stage with us, you come dressed in a wig and a drag or something like that.
That's it. It's either King Diamond or D. Snyder or something, man.
That's right.
Hey, maybe I can go to the Halftime Lounge in disguise.
There you go. But just don't tell them Ralph sent you. But I remember I was in an original band called Chained Uprising and played up there a few times. And my band's played there a few times, and I love the Halftime. It's a nice local bar. They make you feel at home. But moving on, let's hit a couple tight ends before we hit some rookies and where they should be drafted. I would say I'll lead it off, and we can pretty much say Brock Bowers is the number one. Trey McBride is the number two. It's going to be the number 3 tight end, on the board. Where are you going, John, at 3?
Ralph, when I look at this, I'm looking at the list, and man, it's so tough. It used to be that we'd have a guy like Kelsey up there, and he's dropped so far down in the draft. That's tough. I see Laporta up there going crazy, in a couple of these drafts.
Hurt. Porta's hurt. He's a little bit banged up to start the year, but the guy I'm going to probably go with 3 is Kittle. Like I said, no Ayuk. Jennings is hurt. Somebody got to get the ball, and when Purdy's looking, it's going to be Kittle for me. I'm going Bowers, McBride, Kittle. It would be my top 3.
I think that's what you have to do, and I think you have to, maybe throw in a guy like like Laporta, if he's healthy, sees a lot of targets.
You can look at like Mark Andrews.
Tight end is always the hardest. Yeah. Mark Andrews is always consistent, but I'll tell you one guy that I think is going to come on a little bit, that he hasn't really done it yet. You've seen splashes, and that's Isaiah Likely. You thought that eventually he was going to step in, and that was going to be the guy. It's just that's it.
The only thing with Andrews is Likely being hurt. He's going to be out probably a few games. Look what Andrews did at the end of the year. It came on. I mean, Christ, he started off slow. The next thing you know, it's like, bang, he has 11 touchdowns. He's still he's still solid in that offense, but like I said, I can't put him in the top 3. I'd probably throw Andrews maybe at like 5 or 6 range. Maybe somewhere right around like the T.J. Hawkinson from Minnesota. I'd probably put Laporta up at 3 or 4, and you never know. Maybe Kelsey brings it back this year. You can never count on the old guy. He's playing another year. What's another ring? And
That's
go
right.
out of pocket. I just wish and I have him on my team. I just wish he would retire because I can't take another Taylor Swift sighting at a Chiefs game when I got to watch that. But that's just me. But so we're about 10 minutes left, John. So let's dive into the rookies this year. We'll start with rookie quarterbacks. You got Cam Ward. Cam Ward is probably the very, very top guy that's going to get drafted in any of your fantasy drafts this year. Where does he go? What do you think he's going to do? Where are you going to take him? Then you got the kid that was drafted in the 2nd round out of New Orleans. And then you got some guys like Shedeur Sanders. What happens with Sanders? I mean, does Flacco go down? Does Kenny Pickett go down? Does Sanders finally get a shot? these are the guys we're looking at this year. It's not a very, very strong quarterback class coming in, but, maybe Russell Wilson goes down and the kid's been looking great as Jackson Dart. So let's just start with Cam Ward. What are you thinking on Cam Ward? And let's just jump to Sanders real quick.
I think if you look at Cam Ward, obviously, you're looking at the guy that that they're looking at as their franchise quarterback. I mean, he's going to start right away. He's got the thing that I question so much about this is that offense. It's not overloaded with weapons. Obviously, he's going to struggle. So I think it's going to be one of those seasons where it's going to be a tough season for him. But I think the guy has what it takes, long term, to be their guy. And I think once they start putting more weapons around him, I think you're going to start seeing that talent.
Do you think any of the quarterbacks this year, whether it be Ward, whether it be Sanders, so if you were just in a redraft league every year, are you looking at taking these guys? Maybe not your starters, but do these guys fall within the top 24 quarterbacks that can be drafted? Are they good enough to be your second quarterback to take you?
Ralph, the guy that I actually like the most, and I don't know if it's the popular pick, is Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I do too.
I think in that Giants offense, I think eventually, you're looking at Wilson. He's a stopgap for a little while, but I think once Dart gets in there, I think he takes the role. He's got weapons around him, obviously with Neighbors, and they got Tracy in the backfield. Singletary. I mean, Singletary had a touchdown the other night. I think with a young guy like that, I think they're going to bring him on slowly, but I think he's going to be the guy. I mean, that would be the guy that I would. That'd be the guy that I would take. I'd want him on my.
So that's where I was. That's where I was looking at these quarterbacks coming out. If you're in a dynasty league, if you draft rookies at the end of the draft, I would roll the dice on taking Jackson Dart myself.
Roll the dice, man. Roll the dice.
And maybe you can team them up with, if you want to stack the team, you could take Cam Scatterbro. A guy with the last name with Scatterbro. I mean, how can you go wrong, right?
At least it's not Scatterbrain.
Well, that's true. Well,
if it was that, then you got to question it.
Yeah, we could talk about some other. We could talk about some other stuff, but this is a PG show too, so let's not get into that. But I agree with you, John. Jackson Dart. Cam Ward, I like. But I don't put him in the top 25, 26. Maybe somewhere down 27, 28 quarterbacks. If you need a third quarterback on a bye week, it's maybe worth the risk. But that's probably where I'm going. But so the biggest one, and we don't have too much time left, and we're gonna have to run through these. But running backs, a big year for running backs. And where are they going to go? We know Gentry is going to go. He's going to go in the first round of pretty much every draft. Being in the Raiders offense, he's going to get plenty of touches. The guy's a monster. Then you go to the Chargers. You go to Marion Hampton. With poor Najee Harris blowing his eye out with a firework, kind of put Hampton in that spot, the perfect spot to start. Then you got the kid out of New England. What's his name? Henderson. It's a great year for rookie running backs. And then, also on the list is the guy. Let's talk about him real quick. It's Caleb Johnson for all the Steeler fans. Going with Tyler Warren, do you draft him over Warren? Will he start? Who's going to get the touches? We all know Mike Tomlin doesn't like to play his rookie running backs, but
right.
You're talking about a guy who was top in the league in college, and you got to feed him the ball, right?
I agree, and I think if you look at what Arthur Smith wants to do, obviously, is run the football. The offense is predicated on the run. And I think if you're looking at the drafts too, like the draft that I did tonight, Caleb went ahead of Warren. I mean, he's ranked ahead of him. We're going to see a guy that has that physical toughness, that we expect here in Pittsburgh. I think Tomlin needs to get this guy to touches. And if he proves that he's able to handle it, I think you're going to see a lot of them, especially down the stretch. Because, I mean, how long is Warren going to last? I mean, you look at a small injury, and Caleb's the guy.
Right. And going talking about a dynasty league real quick. Like I said, you got these 4 or 5 rookie running backs are going to be key. Gentry, if you're in a dynasty league, did you select this guy first overall in your dynasty draft?
I do.
And then saying that, who becomes 2, 3, and 4?
That's a good question right there. You know what? When you talk about the the list that you just laid out, I mean, obviously, Hampton in in LA, and what Harbaugh likes to do there too, likes to run the football. I mean, if Najee comes back, and he doesn't show as much as they think he's going to show, Hampton's a guy. I mean, I think he's going to get a shot, but I think in New England is where it's at.
I agree. I like Henderson a lot, but mark my words, John. In our draft this Sunday, it goes Gentry. It's going to go Hampton, and then it's Henderson. Those are going to be the top 3 in our dynasty draft.
Yep, I agree, and it should.
Whatever happens at 4, I don't know yet, but it could be a receiver. So these rookie receivers coming in, you have McMillan, out of Carolina.
Right.
The one guy that he's intrigues everybody is Travis Hunter out of Jacksonville. Are you going to would you take Hunter over McMillan, or even in that, would you take Hunter over Mbuka out of Tampa Bay? Tampa Bay has all kind of problems. Who are you looking at there? Let's wind this up with our top 4 receivers, and I'm going with McMillan. I'm going to go with Mbuka, and I'm going to go with Hunter as my top 3. The next guy that I like, and I don't know, but I think it's going to be Matt Golden out of Green Bay.
I mean, just hearing all the talk shows, hearing what the plan is for him, I think they're going to give him the opportunities too, Golden. I really do. I think because you haven't seen that consistency, out of Reed, Watson, the injuries. There hasn't really been that guy that's taken over that offense. And obviously, I mean, you have a franchise quarterback in Love. And having that rookie, the guy that can stretch the field, the guy that can open that offense up, I think that he's going to get a lot of opportunities. And I have to agree with you on that. I like the I think the one thing that I'm concerned about with Hunter, obviously, is how much is he going to get in that offense? We see so many inconsistencies there, obviously over the years.
Number two next to Brian Johnson right now. They're saying he's going to start, and he's kicking around. He still wants to play defense.
That's the key right there. And I've seen him in the if you're looking at IDP drafts now and you're looking at defensive backs, you see him as one of the tops in there. Because they're taking him for both. I mean, if you get a guy like that, and they have him scoring in 230 points as a defensive back. So you're looking at, Brian Branch range and guys like that. So that's
here's a question for you, John, to wrap this up on our receivers. Hunter or McMillan, who are you drafting?
That's a great question.
And where are you taking them? I mean, obviously, Dynasty, they go in the first round. But in a regular redraft league, where these guys fall? 3rd round, 4th round? Where will you take these? And who are you? So you take it out of the first 2.
That's so tough when you think about that. I think if you really want to stretch it, I think I would take Hunter. And I think the fact is if you could get him, playing multiple positions like that, if you have him as a defensive back, you obviously have a roster spot right there for 2 positions. If you're in an IDP league.
If you're in an IDP league, right. But right. I think if you play him in an IDP, you're gonna have to play him in either or. I don't think you're gonna get full points for, both positions. So it's gonna be an either or thing. But the one guy before we wrap this up, John, I'm gonna talk about is Mbuka out of Tampa Bay. Godwin is he's not gonna play probably the first couple weeks.
Right.
McMillan got hurt. They have Evans. I mean, you look at the numbers that Baker Mayfield's been putting up, and the receivers. I mean, this guy could step in, and maybe even not this year, but I mean, this is going to be the guy that's going to be receiver for them for a long time with Baker Mayfield. What's your thoughts on Mbuka?
I think he's one of the guys that's going to be one of the standout rookies this year, and the fact that offense is very explosive. I mean, like you said, and the guy that we talked about him last week is Jalen McMillan and how he stepped in last year. Obviously the last 5 games, 7 or 8 touchdowns. I mean, he was scoring every week. If you put this rookie in here with Mike Evans on the other side, obviously you have Cade Otton, who picked it up again last year. He was one of the surprises, I thought. You didn't see him a whole lot in the beginning of the season, all of a sudden lighten it up. I think that I would put him up high in my receiver list, definitely for the rookies, and I think you could get him at a great spot. I mean, you get him 5th, 6th round. That I'm looking at here. That's a nice, intriguing pick.
I agree with you, John. Well, John, it's that time, man. It sucks for us that we only get a half hour to do this every Wednesday, but every Wednesday at 8:30, join the Rockin Renegades, and we want to thank the Halftime Lounge. Thank them for sponsoring us. Go up there, have a beer, grab some food, and enjoy and support your local bars and restaurants. And again, the Sultan of Sac over here, John, thank you very much for co-hosting this with me. And next week we'll be back. Maybe we can even talk a little IDP. And by the time we get together next week, we're gonna be right to the wall and in deep of our drafts and fantasy football. So, stay tuned. Join us next week. And again, thank you all. Thanks, John. Thanks, Sports 5 for having us. We love you all.